while programmed concentrate as a rule carries out the responsibility, here and there centering physically as the way into an extraordinary photo. For a DSLR or SLR camera, set the focal point to manual center, at that point wind the center ring until the subject turns out to be sharp. On the off chance that you need an engaged subject and obscured foundation, use strategies to accomplish a shallow profundity of field. For better cell phone photos, tap the screen to physically center, and attempt to keep your telephone totally still. 1. Step. Using manual focus on a DSLR. 1. Flip the switch on your focal point to MF. Check the side of your DSLR computerized single focal point reflex or SLR focal point for a little switch marked AF, MF, or AM. If the switch is set to AF, or programmed center, flip it to MF, or manual core interest. While you're becoming acclimated to shooting in manual, take a stab at capturing despite everything subjects, similar to blossoms or different articles. It will be much harder to concentrate physically in case you're shooting moving articles or individuals. At the point when set to programmed center, discouraging the screen button midway consequently modifies the core interest. In manual mode, you'll turn the emphasis ring on the focal point. Make certain to change your camera to manual concentration before curving the center ring. Altering the centering ring while the camera is in programmed center may harm the focal point. 2. Twist the center ring until your subject is sharp. You'll discover two rings around a DSLR long-range focal point. The one nearest to the camera's body controls zoom, and the one close to the furthest limit of the focal point controls center. Friend into the viewfinder, bend the center ring, and watch various pieces of the shot come into center. Play with the center capacity as you see how the shot changes to figure out manual modification. Search for two sizes of numbers marked FT and M around the center ring. The number showed through the review window or lined up with an imprint reveals to you where the focal point is centering. In the event that you see 1.25 on the watcher or lined up with a bolt, objects 1.25 feet (0.38 meters) away from the focal point are in center. At the point when you're concentrating regarding your matter, attempt to ensure the attention is on their eyes, so their eyes seem quite clear. At that point, you can make various looks by altering the gap. On the off chance that you utilize a wide opening, you can make a delicate concentration out of sight. That way, the subject will at present be in center, however the foundation behind them will be obscured. 3. Use live view mode to tweak the core interest. The viewfinder, or the little window that you glance through while snapping a picture, doesn't generally offer the best portrayal of core interest. On the off chance that your camera has a LCD screen, change to live view mode to do a last center check. Watch your shot on the LCD screen, and curve the center ring until your subject turns out to be sharp. Most picture takers want to glance through the viewfinder when they take photos. Holding the camera to your face supports it and limits development. You can in any case snap the picture utilizing the viewfinder, yet utilize the LCD screen to modify your core interest. 4. Measure the good ways from a despite everything subject to the focal point for impeccable core interest. Review that the numbers on the center ring disclose to you where the focal point is centering. For impeccable center, set your center separation. At that point, position your subject precisely that separation from the focal point. For example, in case you're taking a picture, place the camera on a tripod, set your concentration to 3 feet (0.91 meters), and position the sitter precisely that separation from the camera focal point. Estimating functions admirably in a studio setting with still items, however it most likely won't be an alternative in case you're shooting in the field. At the point when you can't make a careful estimation, gauge the separation and change the center utilizing the LCD screen. 2. Step. Adjusting the depth of field. 1. Check your camera's base center separation. The base center separation is the manner by which far the focal point must be from a subject at full zoom. In the event that you need the subject to be in sharp concentration with an obscured foundation, you'll have to get as near the item as conceivable in full zoom. Quest online for your camera or focal point model number alongside the watchwords "least center separation." Your DSLR most likely accompanied a fundamental pack focal point, for example, a 18 to 105 mm with a base center separation of 1.48 feet (0.45 meters). This implies it can't concentrate on objects nearer than 1.48 feet (0.45 meters) at full zoom. A decent large-scale focal point, which is planned for exceptionally nitty-gritty close-ups, can concentrate on objects 8 in 20 cm or less from the focal point at full zoom. 2. Zoom in regarding your matter for a shallow profundity of field. With your focal point at full zoom, position your subject at the base center good ways from the tip of the focal point. On the off chance that your base center separation is 1.48 feet (0.45 meters), the subject ought to be that distant from the focal point. Profundity of field is the measure of the photo that shows up sharp from the frontal area to foundation. At the point when a photo is taken at a shallow profundity of field, an article nearer to the focal point shows up in sharp center, and the foundation is obscured. 3. Use the biggest opening setting to obscure the foundation. The opening setting, or the f-stop number, controls the measure of light that enters the focal point. A littler f-stop number, for example, f2, relates with a bigger opening. A bigger gap brings about a shallow profundity of field, which yields a pointedly engaged subject and obscured foundation. Search for a dial on the head of your camera. Set it to N or Avenue, which indicates gap need mode. In this mode, you set the gap, and the camera consequently sets shade speed. In M or manual mode, you select both the gap and screen speed. 4. Put separation between your subject and the foundation. The more space there is between the subject and foundation, the blurrier the foundation will be. Keep however much separation as could be expected between the subject you're concentrating on and any articles out of sight. For example, shooting a bloom in any event 10 to 15 feet (3.0 to 4.6 meters) before foundation articles will give you more haze than if there are objects 1 foot (0.30 meters) behind it. This rule likewise applies to cell phone cameras. To some extent, you can accomplish the impacts of a shallow profundity of field, despite the fact that telephone cameras don't have optical zoom. 5. Adjust the screen speed and ISO, if fundamental. A bigger opening methods all the more light enters the focal point. This could create splendid, uproarious photos in open-air settings or other sufficiently bright areas. To diminish brilliance while holding a huge opening, you'll have to alter the shade speed and ISO settings. Go with a quicker screen speed to diminish brilliance. On the off chance that the current setting is 200, this implies the shade speed is 1/200th of a second. Attempt gradually quicker shade speeds, for example, 1/500th or 1/1000th, until you accomplish your ideal brightness. Ensure your ISO is set to 100 or 200. In sufficiently bright conditions, higher ISO settings will create grainy, boisterous photos. The specific techniques for setting screen speed and ISO fluctuate by camera model, so glance through your menu alternatives or check your client manual for explicit directions. 3. Step. Focusing a smartphone camera. 1. Tap the screen where you need the camera to center. To physically center a cell phone, just tap on the item as it shows up on the screen. You'll at that point see a square or square shape on the item. Press and hold the screen to bolt the emphasis regarding your matter. This implies if different articles in the edge change position, your telephone will remain centered where you've chosen. Note that the subject you've bolted center around requirements to weight, or it'll get unfocused. Also, keep your telephone a similar good ways from the subject in the wake of setting the core interest. Try not to carry it closer to or farther away from the subject, or you'll lose center. 2. Keep your telephone as still as could be expected under the circumstances. Insecure hands are the number one purpose behind hazy wireless photos. To ensure your telephone stays despite everything, put resources into a tripod intended for cell phones. On the off chance that you don't have a tripod helpful, give supporting the telephone a shot a surface. In the event that you need to hold it noticeable all around, attempt to keep your arms as near your body as could be expected under the circumstances. Hold your breath while snapping the picture, or put forth a valiant effort to slow your relaxing. Great lighting can likewise decrease obscure because of shaking. In lower light, the screen speed is more slow, which allows for shaking to obscure the picture. 3. Avoid utilizing computerized zoom. For DSLR and simple-to-use cameras, optical zoom is the point at which the focal point genuinely moves to grow the subject. Wireless cameras don't right now have this element. A cell phone's zoom work just yields and carefully broadens the shot, which brings down picture quality. Rather than utilizing advanced zoom, carry the camera's focal point as near the subject as could be expected under the circumstances. Remember, most cell phone cameras can't concentrate on objects under 3 and 7.6 centimeters from the focal point. 4. Use separation to obscure the foundation. As with DSLR and simple-to-use cameras, you can control a cell phone camera's profundity of field to obscure foundations. Tap the screen to physically concentrate regarding your matter, and put however much space as could reasonably be expected among it and any articles out of sight. Check your cell phone camera settings for full-scale or picture modes. In these modes, you'll have a simpler time accomplishing a strongly engaged subject with an obscured foundation. If you liked the video, do not forget to subscribe and like. Thanks for watching.